Hi, my name is Alexi Johnson, and I'd like to welcome you to Literal to Living. Before we get started, I'd like to offer a quick word of prayer. Father God, I'm so thankful for this opportunity to come before you and learn more about you through your word. Lord, I pray just for wisdom, clarity, and understanding, and that this time spent will be fruitful, Lord, and that whatever we learn tonight will be something that we can use to apply to our lives for the rest of our life. In Jesus' name, amen. This is chapter 4 of Literal to Living. And for those who may be visiting for the first time, there is a video, a channel introduction that can be watched to kind of explain what this is all about. So I definitely, if this is the first time, definitely check that out. And tonight we're going to be talking about Cain and Abel, as told in Genesis chapter 4. We're going to be reading that in its entirety. Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 26. And I'll be reading from the English Standard Version. Yeah, Cain and Abel. This is always an interesting story. I think one of the most famous verses that I think about when I hear it is, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Actually, that's from New Jack City. But I think about the story of Cain and Abel when I think about those words. Okay. You know what? Let me just mention one thing before I start. I needed a Bible, English Standard Version, where the text was, let's see if I can get this close enough, was large enough to be visible to me, was large enough to be visible to me, or I wouldn't have to get it really close. You know, sometimes Bibles, the text is really small. So I bought what's called a Pew Bible. And there's a link to this particular Bible, or the English Standard Version. They're always trying to make sure that they have the most accurate translation. Well, when I am doing my edits and bringing in the text and copying the text into the video so that for those who want to read along as I'm reading it, I realized that I'm pasting in a newer version than what I'm reading. I believe I'm reading from the version from 2016, the 2016 text edition of the English Standard Version. So I just wanted to mention that in the event that you've seen, I think where I noticed it, where I think in a few places, but I think in chapter 3, when God was speaking to the woman in verse 16, said, "I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband." And I believe in the newer version, it just says, "Your desire shall be for your husband." So your desire shall be contrary to your husband, and your desire shall be for your husband. Same thing. So they condensed it and shortened it in the newer version. So I just wanted to mention that when you see that difference, that's why. All right. Now, coming back to where we are today, Genesis chapter 4. Now Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, "I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord." And again, she bore his brother Abel. You know, I just have to stop right here just for a moment. I know what these words mean because I grew up in church. I know that's not everybody's story. And just because I said I grew up in church, it does not mean that I've been living a life for Christ my whole life. I'm not saying that either. But what I'm saying is there are certain churchy words that I have understood for a while. But what I don't understand is why that's the word that means what it means. Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. I'm pretty sure that even when I look up this word, Adam knew Eve, his wife, it's not going to say what it looks like it means, right? I know that it means that, he had relations with his wife and she got pregnant and she had a baby. But I don't believe that's what it says from a definition standpoint. So I'm just going to take a look. So I don't even have to go to the definition of the word, because just looking at the concordance, the same word from Genesis chapter 3, verse 7, and they knew that they were naked and not ashamed, is the same word that's being used in Genesis 4 and 1, and Adam knew Eve, his wife. They knew they were naked. A thought. I mean, unless you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's always been interesting to me, just that choice of words. But I'm just going to follow the thought through. So this says no. It's a Hebrew word and the second entry for that word. So I'm just going to take a look here. I've always heard people joke and say new in the biblical sense. All right, to know here, know, learn, understand, perceive. Now, I did learn a couple things about verbs in Hebrew. There are tenses of verbs, and I can't remember if in one of the videos I mentioned QAL, HIP, HIL, and NIP, HAL. But there are different tenses of verbs. So there is like an active tense. So you can know, or you can make known, or you can become known, right? Those are different ways of using the word know in Hebrew. And it's not just those three. There are other forms of that word as well, because then you also can have the nouns associated with the word as well, because understanding also comes from the same word as well. So it's so interesting, just the different way that these words happen. Like I would love to just be able to snap my fingers and understand all of the Hebrew language, but I know it doesn't work that way. God, just give it to me. That would be amazing. Okay, let's continue. Starting back with, I'm just going to start again from the top. Now Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. I'm just going to pause for just a really quick second. We'll be starting back at verse 4. That word is spelled YDC. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that. That was that word for know, YDC. We're just going to leave that right there. You'll see it on the screen once I go through the editing process. Starting back at verse 4. And Abel also, so Cain, back to verse 3. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? Fix your face, Cain. Why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you. We literally just talked about that at the beginning, where we talked about how in chapter 3, verse 16, your desire will be for your husband. So this verse is saying sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. So sin is crouching at the door. Sin's desire is for you, but you must rule over it. So it's like this verse is saying, if you don't do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is to have you, but you must rule over it. Like, don't fall prey to sin. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, this is verse 8, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? I always joking, say it right, but am I my brother's keeper? Why that? Why those words? This is keep and the third entry. I'm not going to go through the tenses of this word, but the word is SMR, spelled SMR, and keep, observe, preserve, watch over, guard, be careful, pay attention. That's what that word means. Am I my brother's keeper? It's almost like, am I my brother's guardian? Am I my brother's overseer? Am I supposed to watch after my brother? It's almost like that's what he's saying. Like, am I responsible for my brother? That's what God is for us. He's all those things for us. So God, then back to verse 9, then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? Again, as if to say, am I his watcher? Am I his overseer? Am I his guardian? And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Two men cursed as it relates to the ground. First Adam, now Cain. Cain was a worker of the ground. Abel was a keeper of the sheep. Cain was a worker of the ground. Adam was one of the jobs he was given was to tend to the garden and to name the animals. And in chapter 3, cursed is the ground because of you. And now God said to Cain, and now you are cursed from the ground. Not cursed is the ground, but in verse 11, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. That's interesting. I just want to quickly take a look at what those words mean, fugitive and wanderer, as it relates to the text. I mean, I know what a fugitive is and a wanderer is, but what did they mean in the text? What I also think is interesting that Cain playing the victim, ain't he, y'all? Like, the fact that you were a keeper, the fact that you worked the ground was a gift and a talent that God gave you. Like the text says literally that you are cursed from the ground, which opened his mouth in verse 11, which has opened this mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. The strength of the ground is the fruit of the ground. It shall no longer yield to you its strength. Now you complaining. That's too much, God. Like, that's too much. What? Well, probably should have thought about that before you did what you did. I know it's so easy for us in hindsight to look back on the decisions that other people make, but we got our own decisions that we have made. So I'm not pointing the finger at Cain at all, because I've done some things too where I'm so thankful that God didn't say, cursed is such and such, and it's no longer going to give you its strength. Insert whatever you want to insert, because if God had taken whatever it was and the strength that it provides for us, yeah. So I'm not pointing my finger at Cain. I'm just reading the text and just thinking about it, because I tell you, God is gracious. Okay. I will be a fugitive. That's interesting. The word is shake. I will be a fugitive. The word is shake. And it's one entry, or the first entry in Hebrew, shake. The word is NWC. And it means, it's a verb actually. Tremble, stagger, sway, shake, wander. And so you remember I was mentioning earlier some of these verbs, they have noun forms as well. I know in English we have, not an English professional, but I just remember certain things from high school. When we have a noun, when we have a verb that is used as an adjective, I think it's called a participle. And when we have a verb that's used as a noun, it's called a gerund, I believe. If I'm wrong, you could share it in love in the comments. I don't need to know if I'm right. But I think that's what it is. But yeah, so that's a shake. So there's other tenses that are associated with the exact same words. Now, a wanderer, let's see what a wanderer is. Fugitive and a wanderer. I've read some of these passages so many times. Sometimes I just read to read, just to hear the stories, and then sometimes I read to kind of understand a little bit more about what's going on. To go from literal to living. Okay, this is wander. The first entry, wander. Fugitive and wanderer. Well, what do you know? Okay. That other word was NWC. This one is NWD, as in David. And it's interesting, the definition. So it's another verb. And this definition is shake, flee, wander, and grieve. Shake, flee, wander, and grieve. Part of these definitions of each of these words are each other. A fugitive and a wanderer is a wanderer and a fleer. But also the word tremble is in there for fugitive. The word grieve is in there for a wanderer. He did mention that it's more for him than he can bear. Okay, back to verse 11. And now you are cursed from the ground, which is opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. When he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. A little bit of a head scratcher. Where his wife come from? If I just believe that what the Word of God says is true, then that means that just because it says that Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and that she conceived and bore his brother Abel, it says just what it said. That doesn't mean that those are the only kids that they had at that time. It just says they had Cain and Abel. But clearly there had to have been some more kids, a lot more kids. Because how did Cain get a wife? And his wife had to have been one of his sisters. Because in order for Adam and Eve to follow that commandment of fill the earth and subdue it, there was going to have to be some level of incest at that time. Because if you're going to start the world with two people, something had to happen in order to make more people. And I know that, it's weird. I can agree that it's weird because I know how things are. Yeah, it's weird. That's all I can say. But it had to start somewhere. It had to start somewhere. You got two people. It had to start somewhere. Having read some of these passages previously, I don't remember where it's at, but there is somewhere where eventually God said, now this stops. No more incest, basically. There is a point in time where incest was forbidden. I just don't remember where it's at. But I'm almost certain that it did happen somewhere. Okay, that was verse 17. I'm going to read it again. Cain knew his wife had to be one of his sisters, and she conceived and bore Enoch. The only way that it wasn't one of his sisters is if God created some other people. It never said that he created any other people. And if he did create other people, then that kind of goes against chapter 3, verse 20, where it says the man called his wife's name Eve because she was mother of all living. She couldn't have been mother of all living if God created other women. You know what I'm saying? If God pulled another woman, another rib from Adam, or if God created another man from the dust and then pulled another rib from another man, Eve couldn't have been the mother of all the living. So I think I mentioned in chapter 1 of Literal to Living, each believer has to decide what they believe is true. I accept this is true. God can do anything. And so I believe that this is what happened. And you have to decide what you want to believe. Okay. Cain knew his wife. Back to 17. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. When he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Now, what I think is really cool is, man, they were building stuff, and they just had to learn how to do stuff that nobody had ever done before. I talked about how in the story of creation that God didn't have an earth depot to go and buy supplies from, and I paralleled that to how when my basement was being finished and how I would show up at Home Depot and the contractor would have all the supplies ready and I would just pay. Like, who taught them how to do this stuff? Like, there was a level of ingenuity and God-given talent that was just, that was next level. We got all these YouTube how-to videos and I learned a lot from them. But back then, like, says they built a city. That's pretty cool. Okay, it's a lot of names right here. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael, and Mehujael fathered Methushael, and Methushael fathered Lamech. And Lamech took two wives. The name of one was Ada. I used to work with somebody named Ada when I was in the military. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Ada bore Jabal, and he was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the lyre and pipe. Zillah also bore Tubal Cain. He was the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his two wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. I'm going to say it again. Lamech said to his two wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. I mean, is this not one of his relatives? I mean, I don't know which relative, but is this not one of his relatives? Everybody in this town. Okay, we are at verse 23. Okay, so going backwards. Cain, his wife. Cain, father of Enoch. Enoch, father of Irad, father of Mehujael. Mehujael, father of Methushael. Methushael, father of Lamech. Lamech is telling his two wives, Ada and Zillah, that he killed a man for striking him, a young man for striking him. I don't know who that young man was. He didn't say he killed his son, but he said he killed a young man. So this could have been another of Cain's sons. This could have been one of Cain's grandsons, which could have been a son of Enoch, or a great-grandson, a son of Irad, or a great-great-grandson, or a son of Mehujael, or a great-great-great-grandson, a son of Methushael. Yeah, I mean, who is that young man? I have no idea, but it was a relative of Lamech, nonetheless. Even if it was 7 times removed, this whole town was his family at some level. Okay, if Cain's revenge is 7-fold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. And of course, this isn't something that God said. This is something Lamech said. Okay, now in verse 25, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. To Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. At that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Okay. I don't understand. I can say that. I don't. This part is weird for me, because the way it's written implies that it's like no other sons were born. I mean, it doesn't say that. It's just almost like it implies that there were no other sons born from Adam and Eve until this point, until after Cain killed Abel. At what point in time did Cain kill Abel? How old were they? How many other kids had Adam and Eve already had? When Cain killed Abel, did they have all girls? I mean, because what was the time frame? Like, Cain has taken a wife, right? Did Cain take his wife? Is this like a chronology, right? When Cain killed Abel and he was cursed in then the Lord said to him in verse 15, not so, if anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain. And then verse 16, then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. That's a point in time, right? eventually it said Cain knew his wife, but did verse 25, is that a simultaneous occurrence? It's possible that could be happening at the same time, because now Abel is dead. Now it just says, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. I don't know. These are things that aren't written, but are said to have occurred. These people were not listed in the lineage, right? Like once you go into some of the next chapters, when they start talking about the descendants from Adam to Noah, they aren't listed. Like Lamech is listed as a son of Methuselah, but the Methuselah that you're going to see like you're going to see those names again. You're going to see Enoch and you're going to see Lamech again in the lineage from Adam to Noah, but it's a different Enoch and it's a different Lamech. They have different fathers. So you don't see these names again. You see a whole nother set of people. So, it could have all happened at the same time. I'm not sure. I can't answer those questions. So to be honest, I don't even seek to answer them. I don't. But this is interesting. So you had the first two people weren't born. They were created. Adam from the dust. Eve was a rib was taken from Adam, and she was created from that. But they weren't born. So now you have the first birth. So obviously there's been a lot of firsts so far, right? The story of creation, a lot of firsts. First this, first that. God created the heavens and the earth. He did some things on day 1 through 6. Now you got, you had the first man and first woman. Now you got the first birth. You got Adam and Eve. You got Cain and Abel. There's a lot more daughters off in there because Cain couldn't have had a wife if there was no daughters. Seth fathered some people, so obviously Seth had a wife. Lamech from Cain's line had some wives, right? So, but Cain killed Abel. Let me just write. This is interesting. Why did Cain kill Abel? I think there's a principle in the thought about why Cain killed Abel. And I think it's when you think about your response to other people's success, I think that's where the principles for today lie, is in your response to other people's success. Let's look at that, right? We know that Cain was a worker of the ground and Abel was a worker of the sheep. We were told that in verse number 2. In verse number 3, in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. I don't know anything other than that. We know that Abel, it says, brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. There could be an implication that Cain didn't bring of the first fruit of the ground. But what we do know is that Cain, his offering, God didn't have any regard, but he did have regard for Abel's offering. And Cain was angry, and his face had fallen. And God told him, if you do well, will you not be accepted? But if you don't do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is to have you, but you must rule over it. So Cain didn't do something right. Abel did something right. Cain didn't do something right. Abel did something right. What was Abel's response versus what could Abel's response have been? Abel's response, what was Cain's response versus what could have his response been? His response was to get his brother in that field and kill him. But one principle that I think is important is to shift your focus. Cain was focused on the wrong thing. Abel pleased God. Cain didn't please God. So instead of Cain focusing on pleasing God, he focused on the success of Abel, and that when he focused on the success of Abel, instead of focusing on pleasing God, that's exactly what God told him. If you don't do well, sin is right there waiting to get you. Its desire is to have you, but you must rule over it. You got to shift your focus. When you're caught in a situation where you may not have done well and somebody else did, you have to shift your focus. You have to focus on the right thing. If Cain had focused on pleasing God, Cain could have said, you know what, Abel, clearly God was pleased with what you did and he wasn't pleased with what I did. Let me tell you what I did. I don't know what Abel did, but I know what they wrote. I don't know what Cain did, but they wrote that Abel gave of his first, Abel brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And it just said that Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. So assuming that Cain did not bring of the first fruit or the first, the first of the fruit offering, right, or the best of it, assuming that he didn't do that, Cain could have went to Abel and said, look, bro, I noticed that God was pleased with what you brought to him. Now, I don't tend to the sheep. I deal with the fruits and veggies. And, I had already brought some stuff to the house, that I thought mom and dad was going to like, stuff that I thought we would like. And I had put that stuff in the house, and then I went back through again, and I grabbed some stuff that I thought maybe, of what was left that I thought God might be pleased with. And that's what I brought to him as a sacrifice. He wasn't pleased with it. What did you do? Oh, Abel's telling him, man, well, no, I didn't do that. I went and I gave him the first, the fatty portions of the first of what I got. I gave God that first, and then I brought to the house what was left. I took of the best of what was left. I gave God the first. If Cain had went and did it that way, and his focus stayed on pleasing God, we might have had a different outcome if his focus was in the right place. Sometimes we have to shift our focus. Sometimes when sin is crouching at the door and its desire is to have us, it's simply because our focus, sin does have us because our focus isn't in the right place. I'm going to find a story. I don't always like to jump on the computer, but I know stories, but I don't always remember where they are. So it just helps when I go ahead and look it up real quick. I'll give you an example of when sin is crouching at the door and its desire is to have you, but you must rule over it. It's not the same type of example of what happened with Cain and Abel, but I think you'll understand what I mean. I'm going to paint a picture for you. I'm reading from 2 Samuel. I'm going to read from 2 Samuel chapter 11 about King David. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and walking on the roof at the king's house that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And the woman sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now I'm going to stop right there. Where was David supposed to be at? Beginning of that verse. The time when kings go out to battle. David sent other people. What David was supposed to be focused on, David wasn't focused on. So when David went out on that roof and he saw something that, okay, he saw it. Got it. Once he saw it, sin was crouching at the door and its desire was to have him. Once he saw it. No, all right, got it. No issue yet. He saw it. He inquired, "Who is that?" Sin is inching closer. Oh, that's somebody else's wife. Sin is kind of pulling away a little bit because David the king just found out that's somebody's wife. He sent for her. Sin and came in and set up shop now. David ain't shift his focus. That's why David sinned, because when David should have shifted his focus, same thing with Cain here. Same concept, right? God literally said, if you don't do well, sin is crouching at your door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Sometimes in life, we have to shift our focus so that we don't sin. Cain should have shifted his focus. But the second thing is we can't be, and it's kind of complementary. Don't be envious of the success of others. Like especially our Christian brothers and sisters. The same God, we're going to get to it all, right? But as you follow along with the God that brought his people out of Egypt, parted the Red Sea, the same God that brought the people out of exile, the same God that sent his son as a savior for the world, for the sins of the world. The same God that we saw raising people from the dead. Like, why are we upset? Why are we envious of the success of other people? At whatever level that success comes, when we know that, number one, in the end, we win. But number two, that's our God too. Why aren't we celebrating the success of those people as well? Right? Why aren't we celebrating with them? There was no reason for Cain to not celebrate with Abel the success, the fact that God held in regard what he did. I get it. We get emotional sometimes, and we may need to go sit in the corner by ourselves and go ahead and mope a little bit by ourselves. But come out of that, Abel. Good job, man. You did exactly what God wanted you to do. He's pleased with what you did. Celebrate. Let's, when you envy what other people are doing, it can cause you to start hating on them. People might not use the word hating on them anymore. Whatever the word is y'all use today, don't do it. Like, don't be envious of the success of others, because in part, envy led to jealousy, and jealousy led to, again, that same verse. If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. It's really hard to rule over the sin that's crouching at the door, whose desire is to have you, when you're letting that other sin creep in. Envy, jealousy. Yeah. I'm not going to say that this is a point, but I just want to point it out again. I think I mentioned it earlier, and then we're done. Man, just take it, right? What have you done? Like, once God comes to you, just go ahead on and just be honest with him, and just go ahead on and just admit it, right? Just like in the garden. We heard you coming, and we hear from you because we was naked, right? Did you eat of the fruit that I told you not to eat? Well, this woman that you gave me. And then he asked the woman, well, the serpent deceived me. No, let's just be accountable, right? Let's just be accountable. What'd he say? The Lord said to Cain, where's your brother? What, am I supposed to be his protector? Am I supposed to be his babysitter? Come on, bro. Like, you know what you did. You might as well just go on and fess up. It's not like God don't know. When the Lord confronts you, at that point, you might as well just go on and fess up, right? At least Lamech had sense enough to say, in verse 23, Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. I still think that's funny how he said that. Hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I have to say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77fold. The Lord coming to you and asking the question, you might as well just go ahead on and tell the truth, because it ain't like he don't know already anyway. Might as well just go ahead on and, God, out of jealousy and in a fit of rage, I rose up and I brought Abel out here and I killed him. I was wrong, and I realized that, but I did it, and I'm at your mercy right now. Yeah, might as well. I mean, because at this point, like for real, like, you really gonna get pompous with God like that? Like, come on. Again, I ain't pointing the finger at Cain. I'm just saying, I'm just reading this. Like, am I my brother's keeper? Because again, what he told him, I'm gonna just read this verse again. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. So when you think about the great job that you might have, right? You might be excellent at your job. So think about when you do something bad at your job, and you might sin at your job, and it might negatively impact somebody at your job. Well, what if God told you Cursed is the job or the skill set that I've given you at work. And you no longer, make sure I say this right. Let me open that back up. You are cursed from your job, which has opened his mouth to receive the blood of your coworker from your mouth or from your slander or whatever. When you work, it's no longer going to yield to you its strength. Yeah, like we should be more careful about the things that we do to people, right? Like we're looking at Cain killing somebody, but this can be applied to our life every day because we interact with people all the time. It's not just about him just killing somebody, but this can be applied with slander, backbiting, gossiping. Like there are things that we do to people on a regular basis. God is a just God. So what if he decided, substitute whatever you want, and now you are cursed from this thing, which has opened its mouth to receive this person's blood from your whatever you did. When you work at whatever this thing is, whether it's ministry, whether it's your job, whether it's in this activity, it's no longer going to yield to you its strength. Whether it's a talent that you have, whether it's financial, whether it's joy, whether it's entertainment, it's a pretty big deal, right? Like, yeah, that's what happened with Cain, because Cain was good with the ground. That was the talent that God gave him, to be good with the ground. And he said, you're no longer going, the ground is no longer going to give you its strength. I don't want that on my life. I don't. So I'm trying to be watchful and mindful of what happened. I don't know how to quantify that or to like verbally say that in point form. That's why I say I don't know if I can say it's a point, because I don't know what to call it. But I think that's something like that's a takeaway from this as well, to like inject into our lives, is to kind of be watchful, because I know that's an area of my life where I've messed up big time. And I'm trying to be cognizant of that when I do things today. It's to just make sure that I'm being a good representative of Jesus Christ, being an ambassador everywhere that I go, because nowhere should I be causing strife or backbiting or, just creating havoc wherever I am, because this could be me. What happened with Cain. Yeah, it might not be murder, but I'm causing some level of death somewhere if I'm doing, the wrong types of things. But you may have gotten something different. And if you did, and God is allowing you to share, please do so in the comments. I mentioned every week, we are a community of believers and we can all learn from one another. What I've shared with you is personally what I believe the Spirit has shown me in terms of what I can apply to my life, and I'm sharing it with you. If this is your first time and you feel that what you've experienced, if you made it this far, can be beneficial to you, consider subscribing. If you feel like it's not for you, hey, that's okay. It's not for everybody. If you know somebody that you think could benefit from this, type of content, consider sharing it. And the goal of this always is to go from literal to living. So whether you're here doing this with me or you're doing it on your own, whatever you're doing, that's always our goal, is to understand what the Bible says and then to be able to apply it to our lives. So if you're joining in next week, thanks. If you're not joining in next time, either way, be blessed.